Alrighty, folks. Yesterday was Fed Day. We got the tough Jerome Powell that I was hoping for. But now we just need to step back and realize what is he doing and then what is standing in front of the economy. So Jerome Powell is trying to get the market to stop pricing in 4 rate cuts next year. Jerome Powell doesn't want that. And I think yesterday was a big step in that direction. But now let's talk about what is actually in front of the economy. We're going to do this with the one and only Mr. Jonathan Twomley. You ready for this?
I'm ready for this. Lay it on me.
So we've got so many things. I'm going to list them out, and you're going to pick the order that we talk about them. 1, we have higher oil/gas prices. This is acting like a Fed rate increase because it taps into disposable income. We have student loan repayments starting August 1st, and we've already seen $6 billion paid in September. That will hit discretionary spending. We have a government shutdown that seems all but certain, and frankly, all but certain to possibly be the longest on record. Mark Zandi is talking about it possibly being the entire Q4, 90 days, folks. Think about that. And of course, we have no lending in, commercial real estate. We have banks in stress. We have Germany in recession, Europe. We've got all of this crazy stuff going on, and there's no savings left for consumers. So I don't know where you want to start, but there's a lot of headwinds in front of our economy, I think.
Oh man, I mean, that's a big menu of horribles to choose from. So I don't know. Let's start with the government shutdown.
Okay.
So I mean, when you look at past government shutdowns, right? They haven't really affected the economy very much because the economy just continues to kind of tick on in spite of it. So I don't really. They tend to roil the financial markets because the financial markets don't like them. I mean, nobody likes them, but they tend, not to really roil the economy as much as you would expect. So I see that as being probably less of a threat to the economy, but maybe on top of all the other stuff, it becomes like one more, sort of
the parade of terribles, right?
Yeah,
I don't know. I have a sneaky suspicion that this one's going to surprise people. Because, again, I'm in the residential real estate space, and a lot of the activity that's going on, which is, again, not a lot, but a lot of the not a lot, if that makes sense, a big percentage of a lower number, is Fannie and Freddie stuff. So if we have a government shutdown, I have no idea if Fannie and Freddie is still open for business. Go ahead.
I mean, they're private though, right? I mean, they're government related, but they're private.
Yeah, that's true. They're
so they're not funded by the government.
That's true.
Yeah. They're government-backed entities, but they're not government funded.
Okay, good.
Right?
That makes me feel better. Okay.
Yeah, so they will. So all the lawyers at Fannie and Freddie and the lenders and stuff, I mean, they will continue to be showing up at court and issuing loans to the extent that they're still issuing loans and stuff like that. So not worried about that piece.
Okay. All right, that's good. I did talk to a small business lender, right? That's going to be shut down. They expect that to be closed. Right.
The SBA. Yeah. That is a
SBA
government agency. Yeah.
SBA will be down. And then again, we have the military. The reason I'm worried about this government shutdown is because it just feels like it's set up to be the longest ever. I don't expect this to be a 2-week, kumbaya, because it doesn't seem like there's enough votes on the right or to the left. And we have a split government. It's like the only way something gets done is if they actually talk to each other. And I think the last thing these the right and left want to do is talk to each other. And this could be a long one. And I think that will be a problem. And it will be exactly what Fitch said. Fitch downgraded the debt because of the nonsense in Washington, D.C.
Yeah. I mean, so that, listen, just kind of tying this back to interest rates, right? I think people who are worried about, think there's going to be a rate cut next year. I mean, all this does is force interest rates up, right? If the debt is downgraded, the interest rates rise. And so I mean, that's the way in which the economy probably could be affected by this, maybe more than anything else, right? If the debt is downgraded, interest rates rise as a result, it's even harder to borrow than it is today, then you might see some kind of trickle through effect for sure.
Yeah. All right, so let's pivot to one more that I forgot to list in the parade of terribles because the list was so long. We have strikes. We have the UAW strike, which currently is, 10 or 12,000. with threats of rising tomorrow at noon Eastern, I believe, could be as large as 150,000 UAW workers. This strike has all the feeling to be a potentially long one as well. That's going to ripple through, I would think.
Well, I know that. So one of the things I was reading about this was that the UAW has specifically picked sort of not. It's an interesting strategy. They've picked less essential factories to strike at.
Yep.
To avoid kind of like a mass shutdown and mass layoffs. But the idea being they can ratchet up. They can say to the automakers, well, we'll ratchet up the pain if you don't come to the table. So we're not going to
tomorrow at noon.
Yeah, we're not going to inflict pain yet, but we will, and we're going to just keep on ratcheting it up slowly. So, I think that will force them to the table. I mean, look, you and I have talked about this before. We've had a really long period of time where all of the profits went to the top, essentially, right? Like all of
totally
the increases in worker productivity, like wages were suppressed for decades because of outsourcing to China and everything like that. And now I think what you're seeing is like just reversion to the mean, right? It got the whole thing, outsourcing, low interest rates, all of this stuff that really made it possible for corporations to have these giant profits without passing on anything to the workers. Like that has all come to a grinding halt now in the form of inflation. And workers are like, hey, now it's our turn. The pendulum is swinging back in the other direction. Plus, with an aging population, there are going to start being fewer workers, frankly, soon, right? Which means wages have to go up. So, I think so. But then what effect does that ultimately have on the economy, though? Like if people get paid more, then they're going to spend more money. So in the long run, this is good, but in the short run, it could be a mess.
Higher for longer. Longer. Right. Yeah. So, okay, we got government shutdown. We got strikes. What was next? I'm drawing a blank.
We should have made the list. With government shutdown, strikes, oil prices. Yes. Yeah. I mean, so oil prices are always, this is one that always it hits people in the pocketbook and they really hate it, right? That people complain a lot about gas prices. It's one of their favorite things to complain about. But it's also like a sign that the economy is doing well, right? Like when do gas prices fall? Well, it's like when you have a recession, gas prices go down, right? Like gas prices went down during COVID because everything shut down. Gas prices went down in the Great Recession because the economy went down, right? So there's just less demand for it. The fact that there's a lot of demand for oil is keeping the price of oil up, right? And the reason there's demand is because, well, the economy's humming, right? So it does piss people off, but I think that probably the net effect of it's more of, it's not a cause so much as a symptom in my mind. Anyway, I could be wrong about that, but
I think what we've seen over the past is oil prices disproportionately hit the bottom of the income scale who has the least disposable income. And when you take from the disposable income, they don't do other things. So it could be slowing down. And then if you add on top of higher gas to the next one, we can talk about student loans. That money's got to come from somewhere. We're talking about average payment, I think, is $300. They've already dumped $6 billion in payments back. That's got to come from somewhere. It's not all savings. I think we're going to be surprised at some maybe airlines or travel or restaurants. There's got to be less kind of fun money going around, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to know sort of what the actual size of this is. Maybe that stat, like sort of how much money we're talking about that goes from
$6 billion
pockets.
according to the student loan, whatever it was, the government agency they received in last month. So
I mean, I'm sure some of it's come from the fact that people saved money over the last however long it was by not paying the student loans, right? So some of it comes from there, but I'm sure some of that just went out the door in terms of in partying and in NFTs and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. So, hey, why not? Throw YOLO.
Yeah. Yep. So I mean, it's got to have an impact. I mean, what I've been reading about the impact here is in rent, right? I mean, that's like your prime renter demographic is people with who have student loans. They're kind of like your, your best renters, essentially the college educated renters, right? So
Yeah.
That's where it could really hit, with people
I
just
agree.
not paying the rent, or going to someplace that's cheaper, right?
Yeah. And then the last one I'm thinking about a lot that actually not a lot of people are talking about is the banking system, right? We had kind of this blow up with SVB and Signature Bank and, the other one in San Francisco seems to be on the back burner. But with the rates going up, treasuries going up, the value of treasuries going down on balance sheets, this whole mark to market versus hold to maturity, there's got to be a lot of insolvent banks out there if they were forced to market. And they're not lending. They're having to raise capital reserves. There's got more regulation coming. They're not doing loans. It's like, I wouldn't want to be working in a bank the next 2 years. It's got to be just
Yeah.
terrible.
I mean, I think that's sucking a lot of juice out of the economy, right? I mean, it has to be. That lending machine kind of grinding to a halt is definitely something that would gum up the works. I mean, I'm actually not. This is just my personal view, but I mean, I'm not particularly worried about bank collapses, because I think the Fed is not going to come to the rescue of people, this time around in the form of like dramatically dropping interest rates, or sending everybody checks. I think the way that it comes this time around is like through bank bailouts, right? The money printing that happens will happen, that it'll just get funneled to banks to keep them solvent, right. And it won't be like shoveling money out the door to everybody, right? So I think that's where you'll see it happen. I think the banks will survive. There'll be forced mergers. There'll be things, they'll be handing the money under the table,
consolidation,
to like ships, things like that. But but I'm not worried about a full blown banking crisis, because I think that the intervention will be like, hard and fast and big to prevent it from happening.
I agree. Yeah, I think there'll be a lot more consolidation. And I think part of the consolidation will be the Fed stepping in making assets good, just so they get to the other side of this. So at the end of the day, I think we're going to report a Q3 GDP of 3-4%. I think there's so many headwinds in front of us that Q4 can't be nearly as strong. And early next year, I think we might see that recession come to be.
Yeah, it could happen. I mean, but we've been surprised before so many times, right? I mean, everyone's been expecting this recession for a long time now, and the economy continues to just crank and crank and crank. We could continue to be surprised. We'll see. We didn't talk about recessions in Europe. I mean, obviously the thing, everything's connected. I'll tell you what worries me more than Europe is China. I mean, I think,
gosh, their economy is imploding.
Yeah, China, I think, has run out the string, right? I think that they've gone as far as they can get with debt financing and building real estate that nobody lives in, and all of the things that they've done to prop up, that economy. And I think that they're just running smack into a demographic wall, and they just it's just not sustainable. And I think so that worries me a lot. Like if the Chinese economy implodes, if it goes Japan style and just has kind of like a slow decline, that is not as concerning. But if there's like major turmoil in China, I mean, it's just such a big economy that it's going to have ripple effects elsewhere. And
I don't. There was a time people believed China would overtake the U.S. I don't see it coming.
No, it's not going to happen. And I think India will likely overtake China. And
yeah, I agree.
I don't see China as being, it's always going to be important. It's always going to be,
of course,
be large. But I don't see it as taking over, as becoming the world's largest economy. I don't think it'll continue even to be the second largest economy. I think it'll just get stuck in the middle income trap, and just exist there for the rest of our lifetimes, most likely. So
we've got a lot of stuff ahead of us. We always have a lot of stuff, but I think right now we're staring at a lot of headwinds versus tailwinds. This is part of the cycle, right? The business cycle is real. We've gone a long time without a recession. I can guarantee a recession is coming. I just don't know when. I think the odds are stacking up that it's sooner rather than later. But that's why we talk every week. Jonathan, how can people find you?
Again, before we get into that, I just want to also kind of point out, though, that like recessions are bad in the sense of like they're tough for people. I think they're necessary for the economy, but they're tough. They hit individuals, right? So there's definitely pain associated with them. But I think it's important for people to remember that, even when pain hits individuals, usually that pain is still temporary, right? So
Yes.
people find jobs, it just takes them longer to find them. But it's not like you have a recession and then you're out of work for 5 years or 10 years, right? You'll be out of work for some time, maybe longer than you would have been otherwise. But there's pain involved. And the other thing that's interesting about recessions is the number of successful companies that get started during recessions, right? Partially because people get laid off and they decide to go into business for themselves. Partially because if you can make it in a recession, then when the economy starts cranking again, you're really golden. So I think recessions create a lot of opportunity, even though they also create a lot of pain. And people should just be mindful of that, just like the good times never last, the bad times don't last either.
Yeah, historically speaking, the good times are 8 to 10 years, bad times are 1 or 2 years. Remember that. And again, you want to get wealthy, you got to be able to make some moves in a recession. That's where I built most of my wealth.
Exactly.
So, Jonathan,
that's where people make money, is on
go.
the buy and the bad times. So yes, get in touch with me. Well, if you'd like to invest in my new hotel deal, that you can go to Two Bridges Asset Management. Just Google us and fill out the investor form there. I'll be in touch. You can also find me at apartmentinvestorsclub.com and download my free download, or come and have a conversation with me at Apartment Investors Club on Facebook.
Awesome. Thank you so much.